Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wonder Series. It is Wonder Wednesday. We love Wonder Wednesday. So what the heck is Wonder Wednesday? Wonder Wednesday is your opportunity to wonder how life would be if you looked at it from another perspective, if you thought differently and opened your mind and changed your mindset. Who would you be? What would you do? And ultimately, and this is important, how could this help you live the joy-filled, happy, healthy life that you are searching for, and all with ease? Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Stiegel. I'm the CEO and curator here at livinghealthylist.com and your host of the Wonder Series. So this month, we have been talking about, some self-improvement, how to get a little bit better, and really focus on that life that we want to live. Are we living the life we want? Or are we living the life we think we're supposed to live? So I'm really excited to be talking to my guest today, Nicole Coustier. Now, Nicole is, she's a veteran Silicon Valley medical technology consultant. Okay, that's a big deal, guys. She's a business coach and executive leadership mentor for both private individuals and corporate entities. She teaches high achievers in extremely demanding industries how to get everything they want and need in life. And interestingly, on Nicole's website, I love this. She helps these people to solve their, get this, thorniest issues and get everything they want in life. I bet a few of us have some of those thorny issues, don't we? So Nicole, welcome to the Wonder Series.
Thank you so much, Denise. I'm so happy to be here.
Glad to have you. I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Tell us a little bit about you. Reading a bio is one thing, but who is Nicole? Who is the person behind the bio?
Oh, wow. So absolutely. I worked corporate life for a very, very long time, and I loved it. I wasn't trying to get out of corporate. But what ended up happening was there were significant changes in my personal life. In 2017, my husband at the time had passed away, and I had a little girl, and she was only 3. And at that point, I had to make some tough decisions. So, do I continue to be this consultant flying all over the place when I had a 3-year-old at home? That answer was no. And so I had to make some significant changes. And you know what? It was fine. I left something that I loved to shift into something else that I loved. And that's when I started my coaching business.
I think it's really important to really understand the person behind what you do, because what you just told us, we can now understand that 1, you've been in people's shoes.
Yeah.
And 2, if you could do it, why can't they? Or why can't we do it?
Yeah. And there isn't a single person out there who hasn't experienced some seismic shift in their life. It's just a matter of time, right? And so it can turn your world upside down. And at that point, we all have a choice. We all have a choice on how we're going to approach this, what mindset, what emotion we're bringing to that experience. I'm not going to say it's the easiest thing in the world, and you can snap your fingers and be, exactly who you want to be, but you can choose to not be the person you don't want to be. Mm-hmm. And that is significant in and of itself. And so there's a lot of power in our choices, despite everything going on around us.
Mm-hmm. I think so often we kind of think of we think of what we don't want or how we don't want to be, as opposed to who we want to be and what we want. And so I'd love for you to talk about that with us, because it's really hard to figure out when there's challenge or just everyday life, what is it that we want? And are we living that life that have we really stepped into who we are?
Yeah. I work with high achievers, and for a lot of these people, they haven't really done the exercise of exploring, what do I want? And their first step usually is to identify what they want to get rid of. You know, I don't want the stress anymore. I don't want this travel demand. I don't want fill in the blank. And it is a good place to start. But one thing that I always say is it is actually a lot easier to pursue what you do want than to outrun the things that you don't want. And so what I try to teach people is if you are starting out by being able to define all the things that you want to get away from, that's fantastic. But now let's reframe it. If you got rid of stress, what's left, right? What do you want to pursue? And what do you want to build or create or foster or invite into your life once all the things that you want to get rid of are actually gone? That's going to be a more useful exercise.
That totally fits exactly with what we want to do here with the Wonder series, because sometimes you really do have to step back and wonder, you know, what would life be like if I didn't have the stress?
Yeah.
You know, if I didn't have the big corporate job. On the one hand, it's scary because what would you have?
Yeah.
You know, would you have a job? Ooh, I don't know. But would you have joy? Would you have freedom? So I think there's really, I think it is really scary for people to really look at what it is that they want as opposed to what they have. And let's talk about being comfortable.
Yeah, so true, because that's our challenge, right? When we think about what we don't want and what we want to get rid of, it can be scary because in the absence of those things, we might be experiencing loss. There's a void, right? But really reframing it in terms of what do I want to pursue? What do I want to create is, that's abundance. That is generating emotions of excitement and motivation and curiosity and all of those things that I think serve us and are helpful and have a lot of utility in our lives, rather than the scarcity and the loss and the void that we might otherwise feel. And so, I think the work that you're doing is so important, because it is finally asking the question, what do we want? Are we afraid? Yeah. Are we afraid?
We are.
Absolutely. And it's not a but, right? It's and what can we do? So we can move forward, even though we're feeling all those things.
One of the words you just said is something that seems to be popping up quite often in conversations lately. And it's the word curiosity. My husband, Mark, and I had a conversation about curiosity a few weeks ago. One Saturday, we were just kind of sitting and chatting. And I think as we get older, we're not curious anymore. You know, when we're kids, we're always, but why? How does this work? We're always looking at the whys and the hows. And as we get older, what happens?
Yeah. So true. And, one thing that I've mentioned to some of my clients who experience anxiety or high degrees of stress, high achievers have a very high tolerance for stress. But then once they reach their boiling point, man, then it's like everything crumbles. Curiosity is often the antidote to a lot of those really negative, really stressful experiences and emotions. And again, you can't necessarily just flip a switch and turn all that off. But if you were to add curiosity to the mix, add the what ifs, and, what if I'm capable of blank? What if there's a solution in here and I just haven't found it yet? What might it look like? How might this be good for me? Those types of genuine curiosity questions can help stave off some of the worst of the anxiety and negative emotion that we might experience.
I think emotion is a big part of all of this. We kind of think, we make a decision, we don't make a decision, do we do this instead of that? but emotion is, and for some people they're really highly emotional people, and other people are more internally emotional, which I never know that that's a good thing. But let's talk about emotion.
Yeah. Well, emotion drives behavior, and there's no exception to that. And for a lot of very accomplished people, especially kind of a lot of women who grew up in the age of following in the footsteps of the first women to break those glass ceilings, there's this idea that we have to leave emotion at the door in order to be successful, in order to be, appropriate in the workplace, which is not how it works. It turns out that whatever you're feeling will drive how you show up and how you behave, what you do or don't do, and what you say and not say. It all stems from an emotion. And when we forget that, we may be experiencing frustration or even disappointment in ourselves, that we're not showing up a certain way, the way we want to show up. And we work on mindset, and that's all fantastic, but we forget the emotion piece. And, it was kind of funny. I talked to a couple of people who really don't like the advertising industry, because they just play on everybody's emotions, and they're so manipulative, when really it's not just the advertising agencies that do this. It is human nature. Emotion will drive behavior. Now, they leverage that to get you to pull out your credit card, but the reality is that that's how we behave in life, is stemming from our emotion.
Mm-hmm. When we were talking, I just had a flashback of when I was working back in the corporate world. And funny, I can look back and say that I was a very different person then, because you're right. As soon as I walked in the door, I had my business suit on and, my crisp white shirt, and I was a very different person. And not to say lack of emotion, but the emotion kind of, like, you're right, it kind of got either left at the door, or it was just, it wasn't too far. It was in my handbag.
Yes, that's right. So true.
And I remember a few times, having to close my office door and allow emotion to express itself.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple of instances of, when I was working corporate, a lot of young women leaders that I was mentoring, exceptionally talented young women, who would cry in my office from the stress and the anxiety and feeling like the world is on their shoulders. And then they would beat themselves up for being so unprofessional and crying in front of their boss. And I said, welcome to a long line of very talented, very accomplished women who've cried in my office from the stress. Like, that is, it's not a bad thing, but the more we clamp down on that, and if we never learn how to manage our emotions, then that's when we are most subject to them, right? And they'll come back and bite us. And so there's a lot of, learning. I think the world is kind of catching up to learning how to manage emotions in the workplace, which is
I think so too, because there's a lot of vulnerability there too when you allow emotion, when you allow the emotions, and the vulnerability, not in a bad way, but in a good way. You actually show who you are as a person, because you can be you could be amazing at what you do.
Yeah. But
the way if you have no emotion, people are afraid to come to you. You're standoffish, man or woman, but it's absolutely as a woman, you're standoffish, you're strict, you're a hard ass, whatever it might be. And that doesn't make for a really cohesive team when you're in a corporate world, or even in your home world. I think of my very traditional English family, and they can be short on emotion and a bit standoffish. You and I were talking about this before we started taping. And I think it's definitely a generational thing. but we learn from our parents, our grandparents. So I kind of hope that this conversation and conversations similar to this are really showing people our age and those who are coming up behind us that we can be who we are and still be successful.
Yeah, and we don't have to wait until it explodes. I think when people think about emotion, especially in the workplace, being emotional, what does that mean? There's so much that people need to learn about emotional intelligence, which is just awareness, right? Acknowledgement. Mm-hmm. I feel angry. I feel frustrated. I feel confused. And all of that is 100% okay. Mm-hmm. But also emotional management. So now I recognize I'm angry. What are the thoughts that are leading to that emotion? Like, what am I making everything mean that I'm angry? And then when I'm angry, how am I showing up in my work relationships? How am I showing up with people that I care about? And, what are the results that I'm getting when I feel that thing? So I think the next frontier beyond emotional intelligence is emotional management. Now, what do we do? If we're becoming practiced at saying, yeah, we are emotional beings. Mm-hmm. I know how to say how I feel, and it's not a problem. Now we need to learn, well, what do we do with that? And how do we feel on purpose? And I think that's the next frontier for us.
That's a very, very good point, because you're right. It's one thing knowing and being comfortable saying, okay, I'm angry. Now what?
Yeah. Now what do I do with that? Right. And does the anger serve me? And is it helping my projects and my relationships? Or do I need to be experiencing something else? Maybe curiosity would be good for me. Right. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that.
I love it. I love how everything always comes back to a few certain things, curiosity, really, being curious about who we are, what we do, and what we want. And so let's actually talk a little bit more about what we want. Are we following our heart? Are we following our path that we probably set out to, embark on when we were young? How many of us are actually doing the things that we thought we would do?
Well, I think the first step is just giving ourselves permission. Mm-hmm. Giving ourselves permission to want what we want. And for so many of my clients who are high achievers, they jump ahead 2 or 3 steps to, mm-hmm. but how do I get it? Well, hold on a minute. Let's just surface what you want. Admit it. Admit what you want, right? So many times we don't give ourselves permission. And so it really does start with just unfiltered, non-judgmental brainstorming. I mean, just let it all out, put it down on a piece of paper, go through the exercise with your best friend. Like, let's put all the crazy thoughts on the table about what we could possibly want. Let's worry less about whether we can get it, how do we get there, all of the things that you're already building up all these walls. Let's just have a fun exercise where we surface what we want and we just give our brains permission to open up to possibility. And that in and of itself is a beautiful exercise to do, frankly, every few years. And just open yourself up to possibility. It is a separate question about whether to pursue it, when to pursue it, and how to pursue it. But let's at least at the very beginning not close ourselves off to what we want.
Absolutely. And I know I was reading something the other day, and it was saying that, every 5 years, we're really a different person. Now, I always kind of look back every 10 years, like, who was I 10 years ago? Yeah. But it really is true. Every 5 years, you're a little different. Mm-hmm. You've learned more, you've had other experiences, and, little things that you might have liked in the past, you may not like anymore. And so I definitely agree. This is a great exercise to do, every few years, but I also think it's a great thing to talk to your partner or your spouse, your best friend, because they're changing too.
It's so true.
Mhm.
And not only is it a wonderful exercise of reflection, right? How am I different now than I was 5 years ago, as you point out? But gosh, if there are things that I want, what kind of person do I need to be 5 years from now to have that? Right. And so many times, whether it's super big, ambitious goals, or even, things, the conditions of your life that you'd like to have different, you have to be a different person. You have to be in a different mindset. You have to feel different things. You have to be behaving in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that look like, right? What type of person do I need to evolve into to really realize what I want in my life? And so it's a beautiful forward-looking exercise as well.
I think that, to me, that's the beauty of coaching, is we're looking forward. Looking back doesn't serve any of us. We can only move forward. We can only change today and tomorrow. And obviously what we do today reflects tomorrow. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. So who do we want to be is such a big piece of, what do we want, but who do we want to be? I think that goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I was talking earlier about what emotion drives our behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people who are so tied to who they were in the past, or whatever stumbling blocks they had in the past, things in the past that have defined them, the emotion that I've heard time and again from my clients is they feel trapped. They feel trapped. So when you are in the past and defining yourself by things that, significant milestones that have happened in the past, it then becomes really hard to extricate yourself from that and be forward thinking. So that trapped emotion is not going to be serving us as we move forward. So I agree with you. It is all about future, and, certainly learn what you can from the past, but defining yourself by your past or continuing to linger in the past, all the residue from the past is going to, prevent you from creating that future, I think.
Absolutely. And one of the things that comes to my mind as you're talking about this particular a client who comes to you with these kind of thoughts, they're being trapped. I'm also thinking of those people who are concerned about expectations. Yeah. What's expected of them or from them. And if they're changing, how that's going to change the relationships around them.
No question. And there's huge amounts of fear and scarcity around that. But it comes back to what we talked about earlier. When you are in a scarcity mindset and when you are afraid of what you're going to lose, you will continue to feel trapped. But if you look at it from abundance, what can I gain? What new relationships will blossom? Who will I meet that will help me level up? What new experiences will I have? Will I open myself up to? That's a totally different perspective. And that's one that's going to serve you and get you toward ultimately what you want. But yeah, staying in this space of I'm going to lose, but what are people going to think about me? Listen, what are all those people that you haven't met yet? All of those future relationships, all of those wonderful experiences you're going to have with new people. What do they think of you? Now, that's an interesting question.
That is an interesting question. And just this morning, I was writing in my journal, my gratitude journal, about I'm so grateful for the people I have met in the last year and a half doing these interviews, and all the people who I have yet to meet, because each person, Nicole, you have enriched my life. Yeah. And as you're enriching, the lives of others, and how that changes me, and, changes in a little, and I think it's a little bit at a time. but that is so enriching when you meet new people and you have a connection and have a different thought process. Like it's always, to me, it's always about, kind of thinking outside the box, looking at things from another perspective. And sometimes looking at things from somebody else's perspective.
Totally. It has a compound effect. So many times people think, well, I've met this one person and had an experience, and I met this person and had an experience, and this person, when really what's happening is the increase in the diversity of thought and the exposure to different perspectives. I mean, you started this recording talking about different perspectives, and that's so true. And so it doesn't just expand your thinking and your consideration a little bit. It actually is compounding the way you think about things and how you consider different perspectives, and the light that it shines on anything you read. From that point on, any subsequent conversation, now you're bringing a compounded wealth of perspective to that. And so, yeah, especially this last year and a half, right? People have had to get really creative in building those new connections and those new relationships. So, and people have been doing really good work in it.
Very true. And I think we need to have this conversation in colleges everywhere. Because, when kids go to college or technical school, whatever it might be, and even as adult learners, we need to have these conversations, young. So by the time we get to, in our 40s and 50s, where, we're used to it, where, we're moving forward, we're not going, okay, I'm 50 years old and I really don't know what I want. Yeah. If we can help the younger generations, the generations coming behind us, to be aware of this now, it can only expand for them. And I think the more that, they're our future.
It's so true. And, my daughter is 8, and she will say sometimes in our conversation, she's like, Mom, are you coaching me right now? This is coaching, right? Like she knows at 8, like what that's like. But I think you're right. Instead of hitting 50 and going, oh my God, what do I want? To hit 50 and say, what I want is changing, right? Or what I want, I need to go through the exercise to explore, and it doesn't have to be this like, huge, monumental thing. It can be the way we manage our lives, the way we manage our experience, the way we manage our emotions. It can become second nature for all of us. And I think, yeah, we are at the frontier of that. And for so many others that are coming up behind us, whether it's our children or the people that we're mentoring at work, or, the people that we coach, we are creating that kind of normalcy around how we make decisions and how we evaluate our situations.
Wow, we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah, but we're doing it, right?
We are doing it. Absolutely. We're doing it. And I think what's so great about what you do with high achievers, and what I'm trying to do with, with women 45 and over who are in a career and kind of going, yeah, I kind of like it, but like you said, it doesn't have to be a huge change, but you do need to kind of look to see, okay, kind of take some inventory. Where are you? What do you want? Not what don't you want. Such a great
word, the inventory. Yeah, just take an inventory, and don't put all this pressure on yourself to go figure out the things. And now that I've identified what I want, now I have to go get what I want, right? No, you can decide. Those are separate questions, but take inventory. That's a great way of putting it.
I love it. Nicole, please tell people where they can find you, how to get in touch with you, because I think there are women out there who are listening to our conversation and listening to exactly what you're saying, going, she gets me, and they need to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at Aurelian Coach. You can go to my website, aureliancoaching.com. And you can sign up for my email list there. And because I have free webinars, this month is the topic is how do high achievers surface what they want. And so it's just a wonderful, very timely exercise. But AurelianCoaching.com is where people can find me.
Wonderful. And in the show notes, we'll make sure that we have all that information, and we'll definitely talk about the webinar, because I think it's really important. Having a conversation is one thing, but the webinar is that next step.
You got it.
Wonderful. Nicole, thank you so much for your insight, your intellect, and your candor. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed our conversation and look forward to another one in the future.
It was my pleasure, and I had so much fun, Denise. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Everyone, thank you for joining us here on the Wonder Series. Don't forget, we're here every Wednesday at 12 Central Standard Time. And if you haven't joined our Facebook group, please do so. You can find us at livinghealthylist.com, where you can find our blogs, our experts, all sorts of information to help you up-level your health, your wellness, and to help you find what it is that you want. So until next week, I will leave you with this: healthy living, happy life. Have a great week, everyone.